When you think of movies, what comes to mind? Perhaps sitting in a dark theater filled with strangers, waiting for a large screen to come to life with colorful images. Immersive surround sound fills your ears as stories are told through vivid imagery. You feel a variety of emotions as you watch the narrative before you, sharing in a memorable experience with the audience you are part of. Cinema has advanced tremendously over the years, and filmmakers have brought incredible stories to life across the silver screen. However, to better appreciate the level of complexity today's movies have, one must consider the humble beginnings of early cinema. While early films may seem incredibly simplistic and underwhelming to modern audiences, it is important to remember the limits placed on the first generation of filmmakers. Throughout the history of cinema, there have always been forces that act as limitations on the artistic choices of these filmmakers. Such forces include technology, budget, political censorship, prevailing tastes, clashes within a production team, and so many more. During the beginning years of cinema, technology was only beginning to allow for the ability to capture and present images with the appearance of movement. The first generation of filmmakers may have been restrained by the technology available to them, but they were able to use their limitations to create delightful experiences for audiences of the time. Inventors such as Thomas A. Edison and the Lumiere Brothers were pivotal in the creation of early camera technology. In 1893, Thomas Edison created the kinetoscope, which allowed patrons to view history's earliest films, such as The Kiss and Serpentine Dancers. This was the first time people were able to view moving images in such a way. However, Edison thought such a trend was simply a passing fad and did not develop the technology further. Shortly after Edison's invention of the kinetoscope, Lumiere brothers Auguste and Louis created their own camera. While the camera was primarily used to collect footage, it also acted as a projector, giving the Lumieres the ability to host public screenings of their films. Early screenings shocked and amazed the first audiences, so much so that during a debut of Arrival of a Train at La Ciotat, audience members jumped and cried out because they thought the image was a real train. This format of film viewing became the most practical and has stood the test of time since. Now armed with the ability to create and display films, filmmakers were able to go out and create art. These first films typically consisted of the camera capturing a single shot that framed the action. Typically, these shots were filmed at a long distance in order to capture as much action as possible. Some examples of this style include the Lumiere Brothers films, which often depicted parks, gardens, people boarding land at a boat dock, and so on. This trend of depicting scenic locations and noteworthy events throughout film continued until the year 1903. Because such films captured daily life as well as historical events, they are often considered the earliest form of documentaries. Staged narratives, brief skits, and gags also became popular during this time, but they lacked the ability to create complex stories. Today, such films seem crude to modern audiences. However, this is mostly due to the fact that we seldom have good copies of them. This does not diminish the ability of early filmmakers to create impressive works, though. As films became longer, they allowed for a more creative narrative to be told. George Melies was a French filmmaker who achieved a magical effect for his films. In 1897, Méliès created his own studio in which he filled with flats, trapdoors, elaborate settings, and costumes. This, paired with his magician background, allowed Méliès to transport audiences to fantasy worlds of his creation. Worlds in which people could travel to the moon, be chased by Martians, or view underwater worlds filled with mermaids. Méliès became one of the first masters of mise-en-scène and an innovator in editing. During film production, Melies found that he could create fantastic transitions by stopping the camera, adjusting elements of the scene, and resuming filming. Then, with a slight trim to the film, voila! Characters could appear and disappear from the screen in a flash. Melies would spend countless hours editing film to create these early special effects, and sometimes he would even hand paint the individual cells to create some of the first colored movies. While we are used to special effects and editing, Melies' work shocked and amazed audiences who had never seen such techniques before. Overall, the work of Edison, Melies, the Lumiere Brothers, and many more filmmakers paved the way for modern films today. The next time you find yourself watching a movie, think back to the early filmmakers who helped innovate the technology and techniques we often take for granted today.